maybe some of you guys that are spread out, if we could kind of congregate here since we're kind of a small group. We will be doing some kind of interactive stuff, so it'll be helpful if we're together. Thank you. Oh, you're fine. Yeah. Peace out when you need to. Okay, so I am Sharon Bruner, but I go by Sherry, and I'm from the University of Tennessee, where the high today is 82. So a bit of a culture shock waking up to snow this morning and having to clean my car off. But I made it here, and my car was clean. So actually a really nice gentleman helped me, so yay Wyoming. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about a lit review I did on news media and kind of how it influences racial beliefs, and so how it impacts us, and then kind of the means that are used in media. So we're going to do a couple interactive things, and then hopefully you guys will talk a little bit, and then I'm going to talk more than I'd probably like to. So let's start. So this is kind of how I came up with this idea, and this is like a really random slide, but so we all know what kind of happened in Ferguson, some other cases, the Martin case, the Garner case. I'm assuming y'all watched the news when those things were happening, and I did as well, and was kind of surprised by some of the things that I saw, and so I kind of sought out some alternative media outlets to find information, because I felt like the information I was getting was just not helpful. And in doing that, I found some pretty surprising statistics about specifically crime and as it relates to race. And we'll talk a little bit more about those statistics later. But I found those statistics and I was kind of surprised because they didn't seem to line up with what I was seeing on TV. And so I started a review of the lit to kind of find out what other people had done in this area, and what they had seen. And so that's kind of where this idea came from. So I just wanted to show you, that's kind of my mind map, so you know where I'm coming from. So this is a little bit blurry up there, but hopefully you can read some of them. These are just some random news things that I pulled, specifically from Ferguson. These same kind of things happen, anytime there's a big case. But I'd like you guys to look at these for just a second. And then I'd like you to kind of tell me what kind of thoughts or feelings these images kind of bring to mind to you. These images or these words. Are there anything that kind of stick out for you guys? Polarizing. Okay, polarizing, good. Can you tell me a little bit more what you mean by polarizing?
There doesn't seem to be a lot of middle ground on much of what's represented to us any longer. It's, strongly one side, strongly the other side, very, group identifying. And I think intentionally.
Sorry, yeah, I was supposed to hand you my mic, that's my bad.
Intentionally designed to elicit reactions that cause people to move to one side of the issue or the other.
Okay, yeah, so polarizing and kind of a shock factor is what I kind of hear you saying. They're looking for a shock factor. Anybody else kind of? Any? I'm gonna do it right this
time. I was struck by the sort of myopic focus, both ways, I think, in the presentation of this, divorcing it from a decades-long story about race relations in this part of the country, and just feeling like I can understand why, if all you had was this sort of presentation from the media, why you wouldn't understand that this is a big deal, or you wouldn't understand that conflict or that polarizing sort of like what So I don't know. It just felt very narrow to me. Yeah. Part of a very discrete piece of a bigger story, but the bigger story isn't told. So.
I feel like some of these news cases are purposefully ignoring, I don't want to say arguments, but points from either side. So they're just saying, okay, so this is our case, but they never respond to their opponents. They never respond saying, well, our opponents have said that this was because of racial bias, and here's how I'm going to address that. They never go back and talk about who would oppose them or the opposing viewpoint. They just say, no, that doesn't exist, or they're all categorically wrong.
Good, so kind of polarizing, shock factor, not taking into account kind of some of the background, and those are all kind of things that I thought of when I saw these images too. They're very polarizing. And then I think what you said, kind of a lack of critical thinking about both sides of the issue. And so there's just kind of, I'm going to present whatever side I agree with, and then I'm going to kind of ignore the other side. So that's kind of where we're starting. So I want to do a little bit of an activity with you guys. And I think like groups of 2 or 3 would be good if you guys can just maybe pair up, or we have an odd number, so somebody will have to be in a group of 3. Everybody got their group? Okay, and this is the activity, and this is like readily available online, but it's called the assumption game. And so the idea is kind of strange, but the world is ending. And your group, kind of your 2 people, are going to get on a spaceship and leave. And you get to take 3 people with you. So you get to take 3 of these 10 people with you. Can everybody read these? Kind of? Yeah, I was hoping it would come through a little bit. No. Maybe come a little closer and you might be able to read it. I don't know. Sorry. Make you keep moving. If you really can't read it, I can read it to you. So I want you to look at these. So you pick 3 of 10 people, okay? And so I want you to not only pick your people, but I want you to talk about in your group kind of why you picked the people that you did. And then we'll get together and kind of talk about it as a group. Can you guys read it now?
top of the list because she's apparently got nice bag on her shoulders. She's already got experience with kids. Whether or not kids are still here, she could be good at teaching. She could lead them. Maybe it's a package. I mean, maybe it's a full package. If not, she'll need to fill the void with something. We need Wilson because that dude sounds really like actually help us to accomplish something in life. Like we'll keep him alive, and then eventually one day he'll help us all. It's an investment. And then we pick who we wanted for our last person.
I don't think so anymore.
Yeah. You can get back to Jorge.
What about?
Because one man is right.
Well, I mean that's the trick. We really see. I don't know. My vote's for like Lisa or something because she's young. And
We don't want religion in our
yeah, but you know what though? She's probably gonna bring. Because if we're choosing like take Lisa and Janice, like we've got choice between Lisa and Janice and go. What if Janice wasn't very careful in her profession? She picked up some.
That's what I was thinking.
I thought we already know. You're right. But she's older too. She's older though.
Well, she's younger than Maria.
She's younger than Maria.
She's 32. She's only 32. She's still
Well, I know, but she didn't want anybody over 30. I thought Maria because she had experience with kids. She didn't want to.
Yeah.
This lady's got bags of clothes. She seems on hard times. She seems like
She's
got no home to live.
She knows
So
what's up.
Yeah.
She can help us out. Yeah. Okay. I like that. So Shaniqua, Maria, and Wilson, and then us, and then
Yeah.
that's our posse.
Jorge, yeah.
That's our posse.
Holy the hand of his lover. Oh, she's gonna be especially on Reeboks.
Okay. Fair enough.
That may have to be, that may
That's
have to be
right.
two.
Yeah.
Doesn't say we can't
Can't
take
pick
or can't take ourselves.
That's true. Good point.
15-year-old Chinese American actually evolved. I feel like I'm gonna get cheated out of this if that happens. I want to
Talk about their occupation. So that's not.
Okay, are we getting close? Oh, not close. Okay. Are we close enough we can have a conversation about it? Okay. So who has picked at least one person they're going to take? Okay, good. So I'm going to kind of pass this around and ask you guys to talk about maybe just one person that you decided to take and why you decided to take that person. Okay? So you guys can start.
Jorge. 2 reasons. He's physically fit. That'll be a benefit. And if the purpose, and this was, I'm going to put this on her, I assumed I'm going to put this on her shoulders for that.
So we are heterosexual women, and we wanted to identify at least one possibly heterosexual man, and Jorge was one of our possibilities that would help perpetuate the civilization that we're going to start.
Okay.
So,
You're thinking down the line.
procreation.
Yes. Awesome.
All right. So is that what we're going with? Yeah. Okay. They stole our original one, so we got the second one though. We were thinking Wilson, the 15-year-old. Probably is very intellectual. He has a lot of books, calculators. I mean, you need a smart person on your crew. So, yeah, that's kind of why. You guys have anything else to add? Okay.
Jorge's probably heterosexual, so he can help us.
Well, we don't know. It says he's holding the hands of his
His
lover,
lover.
so we don't know.
We were thinking of taking a second man, but we couldn't get that.
We
And
don't
then
know.
Wilson's smart, so we're bringing him.
Yeah.
All right, who else are we taking?
One of ours was Rodney, and yeah, 17-year-old African American, and one of the reasons we chose him is because he is probably physically fit, because he's like, he has like sweatsuits and he's Nike sneakers, and you also chose him because he's young, you know? That would be good for survival. You don't want you want fairly young people.
Good. So we're getting him this physically fit thing a couple times.
So we went, what, Maria? Yeah, we chose Maria because she's already got the diaper bag on her shoulder, so clearly she's got some experience with kids. And you know, if we're going to continue on in this world and we're going to grow our small group, we're going to need somebody who's good at that. So.
talk about? So we chose, one of ours was Shaniqua, and we just,
She strikes me as somebody who could be potentially resourceful, adaptive, might have some skills that I don't have, about, sort of like how do I navigate a place that I have no idea, where to go or be, I don't know, so.
and we were also kind of, just kind of postulating, like, maybe the reason she's falling asleep on the subway is she's got a strong work ethic. So, like, that's the only place she can kind of find to get some rest.
Yeah.
So.
Good. So all good reasons to take somebody. So some of you have probably seen some of these little things before, but here is who these people actually are. So I'm going to read the ones that we actually picked for you guys because I'm guessing you can't read them. So let's see. We picked Maria. So Maria is a social worker and an ESL teacher who's bringing food and baby supplies to a homeless family. Yes. Rodney. Did we pick Rodney? Rodney is a talented musician. He'll be going to college to study piano, and he coaches little kids in basketball during his spare time. Let's see. Jorge, right? Is an unemployed construction worker who was recently fired for the 3rd time because of fights with his coworkers. Shaniqua is an actress/dancer who's on her way home after a long rehearsal for an upcoming production, and she's bringing home her costumes to wash. So that was a pretty good by you guys. And then Wilson is a member of a notorious, I can't even read that, Chinatown gang facing juvenile charges for extorting money from small businesses in the neighborhood. So we picked some quality individuals to take with us. Right? He could be smart too. Right? So who can kind of guess maybe why I had you do this? Yeah, since it's the assumptions game. It's very good. Good. Why would I talk about assumptions in this presentation?
We all assume things. Every time we see somebody for the first time, we try to guess everything about them in their lives.
Yeah.
It's not always the case.
Yeah. So anytime we're kind of watching the news, we get what? Little snippets of people, right? We get images, we get words, but we get little snippets. And somebody mentioned that. Was it you? That kind of we're just getting what's happening right now. We're not getting all the background. And so we just get little snippets of people, and then our minds kind of fill the gap. And so we take what information we are given, and we fill in the gap. So we think, if he's carrying a calculator, he's probably smart, right? We think if he's coming from the gym, he's probably strong. And so we kind of make these assumptions about people based on these images that we form in our minds. And that's kind of the point of this and kind of the whole presentation, because we're going to talk a good bit about social construction. So if I can get my paper to turn over, we will talk about that. Okay, so this is what social construction is. I'm assuming most of you are kind of familiar with it. This is just one definition. But it's basically the idea that we kind of assume things and we develop this reality based on what we view and what we experience. And that this construction is reinforced through our interactions with people. And so if I already believe something and then I see something that reinforces that for me, then that's going to become an even more strong reality for me. And so that's kind of the basis of this entire presentation, that this is kind of what news media is doing. It's kind of constructing our realities for us. And so people kind of are at varying degrees of influenceability by the media, but everybody is at some level influenceable. So this is kind of where we're basing us off of. So why news media? I'm guessing you all know there are lots of different places where we get these images, where we get these portrayals. And news media is just one of them. I picked news media for a few reasons. Number one, there's more research out there on it. And number two, not necessarily in this order, But televisions are really prevalent today. So I think the statistics I read was 89% of families have a high definition TV. That's not including families who have a different kind of TV. That's according to Nielsen. 89% of Americans have a TV. So we're all being exposed to these images more than likely. How many of you get your news from TV? How many of you watch TV? Some of you don't watch TV? Nice. Maybe we'll talk about that. How that has impacted you, really, at the end. Okay, so, but most of us watch TV. A newspaper, who reads the newspaper? Does anybody read the newspaper? Good, good. What about like social, like blogs? Anybody read blogs? Social media kind of, yeah, it gets shared on Facebook and you look at it. Yeah, so there are lots of different places that we get these. I picked news media because, like I said, there's research and a lot of us watch it. So let's see. Okay, so this is one study that was done, and it was over 3 talk shows. So not specifically like a news show, but a talk show that discussed social justice issues. So they had varying guests come, but they focused on social justice. And so somebody kind of did a study on what was their reactions to white and black individuals on these talk shows. So they found that they were partial to white guests. So what that would look like is white guests talked more often. That when a white guest gave a kind of opinion, that was more often reinforced by the host. And so some kind of like, oh yeah, that makes sense, or that's a good idea, versus maybe not reinforced when it was a black individual. That they more often covered stories where black individuals were identified as offenders. So they covered stories where specifically black males were identified as offenders, and specifically white women were portrayed as victims, more likely than not. 10 times more often that black males were portrayed as offenders in these talk shows. What kind of effect do you guys think that has if we're watching this? I will tell you, most of the research and most of the kind of stuff compares whites and blacks. So I'm not excluding other groups intentionally, but most of it covers whites and blacks. So that's probably mostly what we'll talk about today. So what kind of effect do you think?
It's probably going to reinforce the stereotypes and opinions of the people who watch the show.
Yeah, good. So if I'm constantly watching this one talk show, maybe I really like the O'Reilly Factor, and so I watch that. I don't know how often it comes on, but I watch it every time it comes on. And every time I watch it, this is what I'm seeing. Black individuals more often portrayed as offenders and white individuals as victims. I might begin to construct a reality that says that that's true. Make sense? Yes. Pretty simple, I think. Another study covered NBC, CBS, and ABC, specifically in Orlando. So there have been a couple studies that have studied different big cities. This one was specifically in Orlando. They actually found that blacks were not overrepresented as crime suspects, which kind of at first thought makes us think, well, that's a good thing, right? The reality was, once the quantitative data said they weren't overrepresented, but once they looked at the qualitative data, what they found was really similar. And so even though they were seen within the roles similarly, blacks were more often portrayed doing violent crime versus kind of petty crime, whereas whites would be portrayed doing petty crime. That's a difference. I mean, that's going to affect how we see people. So blacks were represented a lot more negatively in these shows. Okie doke. And the other thing about this study is, and studies in general, is I think what this study helps us realize is that the quantitative data doesn't tell us everything. And so there's been a lot of quantitative research in this area. There hasn't been a lot of qualitative research. And that was one study that did that, and they found something different. So this quantitative data doesn't tell us everything, but in other kind of outlets, it's very accurate to this offender versus victim identity. So Same thing in the Los Angeles news. I'm not going to repeat everything I said again, but again, blacks are offenders, whites are victims. And the other thing that they added was that whites were portrayed as protectors, so police officers, or if there was kind of a heroine other than a police officer, it would have been most likely been a white person. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a few different kind of theories of media effect. This first one is called cultivation theory. Does anybody know cultivation theory? Familiar with it already? Stab in the dark? No. Okay. So this is specifically towards, actually I'm going to pick these up. This is really awkward looking down. Specifically about news media, cultivation theory is. So what it says is that there's these institutional needs to have these kind of ideologies that match each other. So anytime our ideologies kind of get outside of this norm that we expect, that mass media creates these images that kind of bring us back, that create the structure for us, and bring us back to where we should be. And so this happens in media specifically by focusing on certain issues or, again, kind of misrepresenting reality. And so we change kind of how we see reality. Cultivation theory wouldn't say like it's a direct thing. It's just kind of I watch it and then I slowly kind of integrate that into how I act. And so the more time I spend watching media, the more I am susceptible to that, right? The more I integrate that into my reality. That makes sense, right? The more I'm exposed to it, the more it's integrated. And so that's kind of the basis of cultivation theory. And so then we talked a little bit earlier about how experience reinforces our reality. In this kind of theory, so then everything I know from media, I filter my reality through that experience rather than through my experience the more I watch it. Does that make sense? So we're kind of flipping that on its head. The next concept is called illusion. I'm actually going to back up. It's called illusion of knowing. I want y'all to take a risk and guess what illusion of knowing might be. Yeah, so you think you know something, and so you kind of behave that way, whether it's true or not. Good, and that's basically it. So the illusion of knowing is this idea that I watch media, and how many of you watched what happened in Ferguson, for example, on the news? How many of you kind of followed that? How many of you felt like you were pretty well informed about it, like you kind of knew what was going on? Several of you. Yeah, quite a few of you kind of knew what was going on. So the idea is that that I go and I look at this information, and I may look in different sources, and I get this idea that I know what's happening, when in reality, I know what that person is telling me is happening, right? Because we've talked about this kind of polarizing dynamic, and so I know what that person is telling me is happening, but do I know what's actually happening? The illusion of knowing would say, I believe I know, whether I do or not. And so I act on that belief. And so if I'm seeing, did I not change the thing? Sorry, guys. So if I believe I know something, and I go and act on it, and it's not actually true, that can have pretty devastating effects on people. So how this works in the media, these are a couple of quotes that y'all can read for yourself, but there's evidence that news media specifically really affects the illusion of knowing. And so when I see these images and I connect them with words, that I quickly ingrain this, and I believe that I know what's going on. I believe that I'm informed about the situation, which creates a dynamic where media has a really strong power. Why would that be? Why would they have a strong power? Yeah, so or we'd like to think, yeah, that it's factual, that it's objective, that this is actually what's happening, right? And so because of that, we watch this stuff and we have this illusion that we know, while at the same time believing that that we're strong and we can't be easily kind of swayed. And so by the time I get there, that I believe this is what's really true, then it must be, because I wouldn't just believe this because somebody told me so, right? I mean, that would be dumb of me, right? Maybe not so much. So what they found in this study was that, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but specifically what helps with this illusion of knowing is personal experience. How many of you, did any of you maybe have a personal experience with Ferguson? I know a lot of people went. Yeah? Okay. Can you tell us just a little bit?
It's not directly related to that time and place, but I lived in St. Louis County.
Can you just tell us a little bit about kind of your experience?
Yeah, I guess I worked in the juvenile justice system as a chaplain there for about 2 years, and had a harsh education into the reality of structural racism and the reality of that there, especially as it applied to law enforcement. So the whole time I'm sitting there, and I was conflicted because I was thinking this could be an incident where this is exactly what happened, and those incidents do occur, but there's also this whole other backstory that's not being told or divorced from the context of this immediate experience. So yeah, I think I had a direct personal experience of knowing that there were black juvenile offenders who were treated poorly and were in fact labeled or became offenders because the system told us that they were, and they were convicted. So whether they actually offended or not, that wasn't really, that wasn't true, but yeah. So I don't know if that's the kind of personal experience. I mean, definitely worked with young people who were innocent, I think, of the crimes that they were convicted of. Yeah, but were targeted because of the color of their skin or where they lived in the neighborhood. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And so what I kind of want to point out about what you said was, as you watched, you kind of had these personal experiences that were different from maybe what you saw on TV, that maybe caused you to question what you were seeing, and so you're not really sure. The difference might be, and maybe not, but might be that someone who had never had those experiences, maybe lives in a very kind of white community, has always had good relationships with cops, has always kind of felt safe, may have watched media that told them that this happened and not believed it because their experience was different, right? And so our experience really affects how we filter these media images. At the same time, if I don't have any experience that contradicts it, I'm more than likely going to agree with it. That's what the research would tell us, that if I don't have any experience that contradicts this, then I'm going to believe what the media tells me. And so we'll talk a little bit later about kind of personal experience. Third person effect. Any guesses? I like it when you guys talk better than when I talk. Hang on just 1 second. I'm going to bring this back here so we can hear you.
Possibly if somebody or an event is reported by someone whose identity you identify with, you're more likely to believe them than someone whose identity is different than yours. For example, if something's reported by, this will tell my age a little bit, Geraldo Rivera, and you're Hispanic, you might have more confidence in what he says. Or if you're white and something's reported by Tom Brokaw, you'll have more confidence in what he says.
Awesome. So that's kind of the first layer of third person effect is what you're talking about. So I'm more likely to believe information that's presented by someone who is similar to me or someone that I feel like I can trust. So this idea that when I watch media, I form an opinion about the trustability, the trustworthiness, how accurately I feel like this person is portraying what's happened, and that my kind of assessment of that is determined in part by what group I'm in. And so there's evidence that Black individuals more often trust Black reporters, that white people more often trust white reporters, that Latinos more often trust Latino reporters, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of the first layer of third-person effect. And then the second layer is that I assume, for the most part, that I'm not as affected by media as I might be. So I underestimate how much these messages affect me, and I overestimate how much they affect you. So when I'm watching these things, I think that other people are being swayed more quickly than I am because I'm too intelligent to get swayed, right? We talked about that in the last slide. So I assume that everybody else is getting swayed more frequently. And so then I act on that, which can be a really good thing. Why would that be a good thing? Did you all see on the program where this said it was an interactive session? Yeah. So why might it be a good thing for me to believe that other people are more influenced and to act on that belief? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I might, if I think that I've watched a media that says that. I don't know. Well, let's use this. So all Black people are offenders, or a lot of Black people are offenders, and I know that's not true. But I think, oh gosh, y'all saw this, and y'all believe it's true, right? Because I'm overestimating. Then I might feel really like I need to let you guys know that that's not true, right? And so it might motivate me to take action on this. Why might it be a bad thing to underrepresent how much I believe this and overrepresent other people? What negative effect might that have? Do what? Yeah. Why what? Yeah, so the blind leading the blind kind of idea that I don't know what the heck's going on. I think I do, but I really don't. But I'm acting like I do, right? I'm out here. Can I just bring this over here?
I worked at a mechanic shop, and all of them were petrified of Ebola on account of one of the service advisors saying it was here. And so, if anything, I think that's a good example because it's completely ridiculous and the person was fed by the media.
Yeah, so I think that's how kind of big scares happen. People think they know what's going on and say, oh no, Ebola's going to kill us all. And well, you know it didn't. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? Third person effect? It's kind of a good. Okay, this one's really easy. I think y'all will be able to deduce what this one is. In-group bias. Let's give it a try. Anybody?
Wouldn't another word for it be ethnocentrism?
Yes. Who knows what ethnocentrism is? Anybody? Yeah. Can you tell us?
You tend to believe people who have the same beliefs, or you tend to be swayed by theirs if you guys have similar ideas or same facts. So if you're in a group and there's different people having different beliefs, you pick the people that you're most comfortable with, that you have the same ideas with.
Good. So in this kind of idea, there were some studies done that compared Greek, this is not racial, but Greek individuals with non-Greek. We're talking about Greek, we're not talking about Greek, what do you call them? Fraternities and sororities, Greek life. So we're not talking about actually Greek people, but people who are in a fraternity or sorority with individuals who are not in a fraternity or sorority. And so it didn't directly talk about race, but what they found was if they watched a video of a crime, and then someone from the Greek community reinforced the idea that this person was an offender, that they were more likely to agree with that. Whereas if they didn't, if the Greek person said they weren't, then they were less likely to agree with it. And vice versa for a non-Greek. So if they saw a Greek person, they were likely not to go along with that because they were not also part of the Greek community. So kind of that, the strength of a group of people. Was that a hand or is that just a scratch? Awesome. Okie doke. Nope, you're good. So that was kind of the first layer. And then they showed them, so they showed them kind of the idea, and then they showed them really divisive media. And what they found was they were even more likely to go along with the group. So they were kind of likely when they hadn't seen this divisive media, but once they saw this divisive media, all of them went along with their group. And so what this tells us is the power of groups to begin with are pretty powerful. When groups are exposed to divisive media, it becomes even more powerful. And some of the most obvious groups in our society are, I think, gender and race, right? Do you agree with that? And so this forms a very strong kind of group.
Check.
media, I don't think it's working. Is it on? Can you hear me? Boom. All right. It is. Now I hear it. Okay. So media does that by we find out about an event, right? We'll use Ferguson because that's kind of I'm not trying to make that like a hot topic again. I'm just like, that's what my research was on, so that's what I'm going to talk about. So we'll talk about Ferguson. So we get this kind of message originally that a white cop shot a black teenager. And there were some divisive messages in that, but not too many. And then the next thing we see is what? What quickly came after? Whoa, goodness. Do what? Yeah, protests, riots. We saw images, and some of the ones that I showed you, police officers with a hat that says murderer. So we see these images, and based on our experience, we very quickly get into a group. And then based on that group, we filter these images. So if I have experience in that, I might get into the group that says, yeah, he probably was mistreated. Or I get into the group that says he probably wasn't. And some of us may remain neutral. The research would suggest that most of us don't. And so based on that, then we kind of filter everything else that happens. And what does that do? It goes, right? So I'm over here, and you're over there, and we don't talk, right? Does that make sense? And so, and because of that, now I have an even stronger belief about what it is to be over there and what it is to be over here. And over here is right? And over there is wrong. So that's kind of what happens. This is our last theory. So what brave soul in the room wants to take a wild stab at what priming might be? Anybody? Exactly. So some stuff up here that might give you a little bit of a hint on what this is. But again, suggest that the amount of TV that I watch impacts what I believe because TV primes me to believe certain things. And so it reinforces any stereotypes that I might already have about a group. So if I already am kind of fearful of men, for instance, and then I watch the media and I see men killing women, and I see men raping women, and I see men robbing people, that's going to reinforce my stereotype, right? That men are dangerous, that men are scary. And what the evidence would suggest is that news media, specifically because of the images, is really, really good at reinforcing those stereotypes. Better than really any other type of media. TV in general, not necessarily just news, but TV in general. So what they found was that when individuals viewed more media, more news, that they were more likely to be fearful and more likely to think that crime was really happening in their neighborhoods. So individuals who didn't view a lot of media maybe felt relatively safe and like weren't especially fearful of crime, whereas individuals who did view it were the opposite. Now this is where I'm kind of curious about your guys' experience, saying you don't really watch TV. Do you think, would your experience kind of line up with that or not too much? Yeah, okay. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Nope, rejected. It's good. Talk really loud. Good. Yeah. So kind of, I like that analogy actually really well, that you kind of, which one do you feed? And we would often find that media feeds the not good one and feeds those kind of stereotypes and that kind of thing. And so it's kind of a catch-22, because on one hand, why do we watch news? So we know what's going on, right? So we can be informed about what's going on in the world, because we need to know what's going on in the world, right? And what happens when we watch media? We might actually be less aware of what's actually going on in the world, and we might actually kind of have these perceptions, these fears that are not true. So again, kind of a catch-22. The other thing is that kind of creates this singular view of race. So when they did a study, and they found that most people that watched news media specifically felt like people, rather than institutions, are to blame for the problems that happen today. So somebody mentioned institutional racism. Who was? I think was it you? Somebody mentioned institutional racism. So that there's this idea that that there's kind of a built-in racism in our structure within this country. Watching news media combats that idea and says, well, people are poor because they're lazy, right? They don't work hard. If they would just work harder. It's not about institutions. It's not about opportunities. It's about they need to work harder because other people can do it, right? We see these stories about other people that have done it. The same thing about crime. So that people rob because they're bad people, not because their kids are hungry or because they can't get a job because they have a black name. And so when they put in an application, it's looked over. That those things don't exist. It's because they're lazy or some other reason. That media kind of portrays that idea and helps us to buy into that idea, which some would argue is not true. And then the other thing is that media kind of tells us what's important. So I don't know if you know, but about the same time that Ferguson was happening, there were several other shootings of young black males in this country that didn't make it on mainstream media that I'm guessing a lot of Americans don't even know happened. There were also shootings of white individuals that happened during that time. But we saw one story for 2 weeks, pretty much all the time, right? Why? Why do you think that is? It was exciting, right? It was sensational. We could all get into it. What's going to happen? What's this grand jury going to do? And we all had opinions, and we could argue about it, and we could really get excited. And so that's kind of what media does. Another example would be kind of the war on drugs. Was very media influenced. That drugs are really, really bad, and it's happening all over this country, and it's terrible, and we need to do something about it. Was driven by the media, that was important. There's lots of other problems that are happening in this country too, that the media doesn't encourage us to deal with. So that's kind of a agenda setting. So we're gonna do a couple, y'all are so interactive that we're gonna do some more interactive stuff. As soon as I find my notes, which are on the floor, on the table, and on the stage. So I'm gonna ask you to take a risk, maybe have an unpopular opinion here. So which individual of these 4 would you most quickly kind of associate with an assault? Which one would you think? Assault. And it's okay if you pick. So the woman in the corner, okay. The white guy. Any others? Okay, how about robbery? How about robbery? I want your this is gut reactions. It's free association. Don't think about it. Just pick a person. All right. Bottom left. That's actually a black woman. I don't know if that, it kind of looks like a guy from here, but it's actually a black woman. Okay. Anybody else? The other people? Okay. Drugs. Who do you think got arrested for drugs? I probably picked bad pictures because she looks a little drugged out. The others don't. Yeah. Yeah. You know. Okay, how about sex offenses? Who raped somebody? The white guy. Who bribed somebody? Who's doing white collar crime? White collar, not white crime, white collar. Free association, very quickly. Who? The black guy. Okay. Okay. All right, so we're going to talk a little more about that in a second, but the next one. Who would you most quickly, as soon as this slide goes forward, associate with a victim? Who do you think is most likely to be a victim of that assault, that robbery? The female? Yeah. Yeah. So statistics would tell us that it's actually pretty even, male and female victims, that 48% of the time it's females, 50% of the time it's females, 48% of the time it's males. And there's some little leeway where we don't know. Is that surprising? A little bit? Yeah. I think most often we think females, right? So the numbers. Yeah. And so this is just in general. Yes, this is all victims of any kind of crime. Yes. So I think if we broke it down and we said victims of, and you can go look this information up. It's on the Department of Justice website. Department of Justice, I'm pretty sure it's the Department of Justice website. You can go look up the crime statistics. Again, the ones that are reported. So yeah, I'm guessing if we said assault or we said rape, for instance, the women's number would be much higher, but in general. And then these are the numbers for race. So most offenders are white, 55%, 28% are black, and then other races are 1.5%, which is not kind of consistent with what we see, right? We see what? Black people, scary looking black people most of the time. Good. Okay, so going to read some more statistics. So assault, white people are twice as likely to commit assault as black people. Sexual offenses, this one actually surprised me a little bit, but both forcible and non-forcible, whites are 3 and 4 times more likely to commit these offenses. Arson, whites are 3 times more likely. Bribery, whites are 3 times more likely. Drugs, whites are 3 times more likely. The only crimes that are committed more frequently by blacks, anybody want to guess? Nope, not domestic violence. Robbery is one, and the other one's kind of random, gambling. I wouldn't have guessed that one. Yeah, gambling is more often committed by black individuals. So those are the only 2. Is that consistent with what you guys kind of see? No. And I take you folks to be, we're at a social justice conference, so I hope that we're people who think about these things, who critically think about these things, right? And so maybe we hope we're not as affected by these things as other people might be. But when we're seeing these images all the time, this is what we buy into, which is not accurate. So what do we do? First thing we do is we have personal interactions. So what was your name? Joe, like Joe back here. We associate with individuals who are different than we are. Not a very new novel idea, but we intentionally associate with people who are different than we are. And by doing that, we are less susceptible to images that tell us things that are not true about that group of people, regardless of what group it is. In this case, we're talking about black and white. It could be any group. Intentional selection of media. So I think, when I think about this, what I think is you don't just watch one news program over and over and over again. So you don't just watch The O'Reilly Factor, which I don't know if anybody here even watches that, but you don't watch that and only that, because you're getting one idea, you're getting one opinion, you're getting one portrayal. Education, so communications majors, that kind of thing, that we are educating them on culture just as much as we are other groups. And then one thing that they found was that sharing of hopeful stories in the media, so individuals who didn't fit the stereotype, was very effective in changing beliefs. The one caveat to that is hopeful stories that don't push down another group of people. So often what we see is hopeful stories, but they kind of maybe put a bad light on another group of people. And so when that happens, it's not effective, because what do? I go over here and you go over there, right? So stories that are hopeful, that tell of things that are happening, but don't say bad things about another group of people. Any other ideas of what, for you guys, maybe we could do to protect ourselves or help others kind of with this media stuff?
Go into things, can I actually reach that? Hey.
Boom. Wait for it. No, it's not. That was a really good try. Thank you for all your work on it.
I was going to say, though, I think, going into things with an open mind. I mean, just knowing that all this exists and getting as many opinions as you can on a situation before you actually settle on something. I guess, trying to remain as neutral as you can be, because you aren't in the center of this matter and you might not know the full story, is important.
Good. Oh, awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So if you don't make yourself schizophrenic while you're watching the news, you're not sure if you know what you know or you don't know what you know. But yeah, kind of being aware. Yeah.
I think that the defeatist in me says the ship's already sailed on this one, but trying to ensure that public airwaves remain public, and that they aren't owned by private or controlled by private or corporate interests. So actually saying that PBS has a place still maybe in the world, and NPR, and even though I can't really hold either of them up as outstanding examples of media neutrality, but trying to at least make an argument for that, the importance of that. I don't know that net neutrality, that was actually exciting, sort of, that went down the way it did. But that sort of argumentation, that the public owns the airwaves or media, and that we actually have a controlling stake or interest in it beyond what MSNBC or Fox or anybody else tells us we do.
Yeah, and so I think that would be intentional kind of selection of media, that I'm listening or watching those things, supporting, maybe even financially supporting those things that are allowing diverse opinions and diverse views that may better reflect the public opinion. Anybody else? What else do you think? I don't know if I can reach you, but I'm going to try really hard.
I'm loud, it's all right. Hooray. I think being aware of things that people in media can do is something that's important, because I remember we had to look through newspapers from the 1930s, and you look through the funnies, and if you see somebody who's African American, it's a set of eyeballs and a set of lips. And I think they still do that, just more subtly. So a thing you can think of is how media is shaping your view very consciously, and not just accepting it or focusing on one thing, just knowing what different groups do to shape your opinion in the first place is a smart idea.
Good. trip over this cord. That'd be really bad. Anybody else? Anybody from over here have any thoughts? Y'all are really quiet.
I'm thinking about when my students come and they bring information that they've seen through social media or this whole new world of newspaper and television news that they've started getting into. And the one question that I always have for them when they bring me this information or they tell me about these stories is, what's the evidence behind it? So just encouraging them not to take things at face value, to actually dig deeper, to find multiple sources and kind of correlate all of this information so that they have a less one-sided view of stories, and just build the evidence base.
Yeah, so I don't know if I mentioned this, but one of the things that some of this talked about is the idea that the accessibility of media has made it so we don't critically think about, because it's out there, right? So it must be true. The other thing I think when you were talking is I thought, I don't know how many times I've been on Facebook and seen somebody share an article and I go and read it and it has not one citation, not one is somebody's opinion about something, doesn't have anything to back it up, which I'm not saying you can't have an opinion, but maybe don't present it as fact. But these things are getting shared all over the place, right? And so if you're not prone to kind of critically thinking about this, or you don't know how strong those images can be, you read that article and that's true, right? No, it's not. That is like one of the most frustrating. I'm like forever, yeah, this doesn't have any citations. Like, seriously, no. Yeah, okay. That's a good point. Anything else? I know I saw it on your face. I thought you were thinking back there.
So, a little digression, but I'm wondering if there are any studies. There are now, news feeds on websites and on, mobile devices, and I understand that, the order of priority comes from the number of viewers, and so there's actually the viewer response that shapes what other viewers are seeing. Do you know, is that true? Any comments?
I would assume that's true. I haven't read anything about that. I would guess that's true though. Yeah. My work was fairly focused for this purpose, but I'd like to broaden out a good bit, because now that I've got into it, I'm really interested. I'm fairly passionate about kind of this idea. So, yes, ma'am. Yeah, these are based on these are based on studies. Yeah, and I have 3 slides of references, and I'm gonna pass around a little sheet of paper if y'all want the game that we did, and then the PowerPoint. I'll email that to you. But I have like 3 pages of references, and that's where these came from. That these are research evidence. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think a combination is probably the most effective. So I would say, if you had to pick one, they would say personal interaction. And there were, I think, 2 studies that said that. So, I mean, not a ton. 2 studies said personal interaction was the most effective. So, yeah. Any other questions? Maybe.
I feel like this problem's gotten worse. I don't know why I feel that. Maybe it's just because I'm catastrophizing the present. But anecdotally, it seems to me that this has gotten worse. And almost want to blame talk radio. Like early '90s talk radio is where the polarization effect really. But is there any research that's traced the development of this or that polarization that you talked about? When that really has it always been this way, and I just feel like it's worse, or is it in fact worse? Do you know? Is there anything out there that's
I don't know that I found anything that specifically traces it, but definitely references to the availability of this information and how easily it gets spread has created that, kind of regardless of how it gets spread. It gets spread really quickly, and it's at our fingertips, and so it has gotten worse. Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question.
I think it helps.
Yeah.
24-hour news cycle didn't used to exist. We used to have CNN.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're almost out of time. Sorry, guys. All interactive now. Okay. I appreciate you guys coming, and if you have any questions or anything, you can catch me outside, and I'll get the paper for you to write your emails on if you're interested in the presentation too. Thanks, guys.